Joining me today on the Strong Collective podcast, my good friend and long-term fitness man in the space, Mr. Dan Osman, someone who most people are going to know, will have seen, will have heard of, will have seen some stuff about, and I'm very honoured for you to join me on this as a guest, because normally I feel like, I don't know, it's the other way around sometimes. I feel like you've spoke to me a few times on different podcasts over the years, so this is quite a novelty for me. So thank you, man, for doing this.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I'm honoured to chat with you on a podcast. There'll be lots of chats anyway. I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be when they're recorded and shared with other people, but here we go.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I said to you before, I don't want this to be all about fitness, all about like, okay, yeah, so tell me the things that you do and how you coach people and all of those things that, yeah, it's great stuff, right? But I don't want it to be like that. I'd rather these chats become something that we can actually dig into, like the person behind it a little bit more and find out a few things around you and like who you are. Because I know you anyway, but I also feel like there's so much that comes out of just having a conversation with you. I feel like sometimes it'd be cool to just record it and see what happens. So that's the premise of the podcast. Whether it happens, I don't know. So we'll just see what happens in the moment. So
No, I agree, mate. Much as when we weren't recording, I was saying to you, I feel like sometimes when podcasts are set up, people come in with this attitude of almost not necessarily from a deceitful point of view, but coming in with like a performative front, like I've got to show my professional best, and I can't share all my full opinions, or I can't share my own personal experiences because you very much know that that's my interest, is the humanistic side of things and actually what makes people tick, not just what they know and what they do for a job. I think that's a whole nother conversation as it sells people that make their whole identity their job, and what they do is a facet of what we are. Like most things, we're all complex apes, and there's lots of different parts of us.
yes, exactly. And so I have got a few questions, and we'll just see what happens, see what goes with it. So if I was to open up with this question, it's quite big, but
My safe word is meatloaf, because I will do many things for love, but I won't do that. So if I say meatloaf, I'm just not prepared to answer it. All right,
okay, meatloaf. We'll get that done
meatloaf.
in check. How? Oh, I'm quite curious of this anyway. I mean, from knowing you a little bit as well, and some of the things, and also the things that you've gone through and stuff like that, and also how you've been in this space for quite a while now. How do you stay motivated and overcome some of the challenges that come up through like the last, I don't know, 18 years, is it? Something like that you've been doing this?
Yeah, that sounds really long time. I guess it is a really long time because that also sounds made up, I think, as well. Like if I said to people, "Oh, I've been doing this for 18 years," like not because I don't look old enough, but I quite literally started as a level 2 fitness instructor, just wiping sweat off machines when I was 19 at uni. So at 37 now, through various different incarnations of like how that job has transitioned, it is. Like I'll say coaching for 18 years, but I don't think necessarily I have been coaching in that time, because I think most people when they first get into the industry is more from an instructional based, this is how you do exercise perspective, rather than actually like how can I address motivation with this person, why is this adherence problem there, like where's compliance in this, why do they keep dropping off with things, and thinking about other aspects of injury and all the other things that we think about now from a human behaviour change standpoint that just didn't even enter my head back then. So an incarnation of coaching, but probably not coaching when I was 19. It was more, this is how you do a bench press, mate.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of change over that time period, but and there must have been a few challenges along the way, right? So how do you overcome things like that when they come up?
I think it's just evolving with it and taking it as it arises. Because there's not, our industry is fairly young. It's fairly still formative. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people have grumbles about the fitness industry now, but it's the best time to be in it because actually it's come a long way in a very short amount of time. Because you go back 10 years or so and only a couple of people really had their voices heard. It's quite elitist. You didn't have this wealth of knowledge, this wealth of experience out there. You didn't have specialisms in certain fields. You didn't have just a length of experience apart from Czech and Poliquin pretty much. And I guess my route was maybe less conventional to how most people get into the industry. So it wasn't progressive. And I think the interesting thing when we talk about the fitness industry, there isn't a clear line of succession or a clear trajectory for career progressions over time, if that makes sense. So when I first got an interest into fitness, it was very much for my own interest, my own personal interest, and strength and conditioning specifically. So I did my level 2, did my PT to accompany the S&C work I was doing at my uni, and really sports performance was my only real interest, and it was mainly through an academic route. So all my voluntary work would be the English Institute of Sport, so it would be evidence-based. It wasn't Fitspo as Fitspo is now. So this is, like, I guess, still fairly almost new to me. So I didn't really have a lot of the inspiration that I guess people coming into the space will have now. And it was more a byproduct of actually, if you work in strength and conditioning and you want to travel the length and breadth of the country for not a lot of money, that is the route, or at least it was back then. Even now you're having PhD positions advertised for an internship, whereas I don't really know many people that live that way. So my fall into, the challenge of, I guess, personal training was just making a living doing what I really loved doing at that time. And that was, although I was doing a strength and conditioning internship with Saracens Rugby Club, because it was an internship, I wasn't getting paid. So I was doing personal training alongside that. So the challenge of trying to run a business, pay my bills, because I was still renting at that time, renting a flat with my wife, and navigating that space. And then when you say challenges, I think they come up in various different forms for different people. So my then next challenge was, my wife was going through a little period of anxiety and stuff, so we relocated back to Essex to be closer to family and things like that. So essentially leaving everything I'd formed back in Hertfordshire. I was based working for the Sarries and my S&C role and doing a bit of PT, and having to start from scratch, but having nowhere to live. So moving back into my mum's for 2 months whilst we kind of got our money together, and buying a house. So we bought our house at 22. As someone self-employed, I guess you can attest for, you need to prove you earn a certain amount of money. So when I was building stuff up from scratch, I actually had to get a job in a school at the time. So I was working for a school sports partnership, which is responsible for putting on school sports events for primary schools, secondary schools, and being in charge of the competition side of things from that point. So that challenge was juggling a full-time school job with working in a gym every single night to build up the PT business. To fast forward a few years, I ended up becoming like what was then called a partnership development manager, in charge of this school sports thing, working 60, 70 hours a week with the PT stuff, and having to make that choice. Like, if this is what I want to do and I can actually pay my mortgage, pay my bills and afford to live, then I need to make the leap now. And I did that, and that is, I guess, more of a typical route, but not in terms of, I never worked in a commercial gym from that standpoint. I always worked in a private facility. So my experiences and challenges I face will be much different to a lot of people, but then it's the challenge of, as I know you've faced, going from a bit of paid employment with self-employed stuff to full self-employed stuff, to marketing yourself and developing the necessarily interpersonal skills with people to make sure you have a consistent income, to not necessarily being a snob and too picky about the hours you work with in the first instance, but then having to develop some boundaries later on, because then you find you're working all the hours under the sun. And it's, so I don't want to say there's a structured, planned way of dealing with challenge, because the truth of it is I've been winging it. And I think most people are, because unless you're in it, you can't possibly plan for some of the challenges you experience. So I don't want anyone to be under this false pretense that I had this distinct plan of action. It was very much, these are the challenges that I'm facing now, and this is what I need to deal with it. So much that the first private facility I worked in when I moved back to Essex, my rent was £1,000 at the time. And they decided they wanted to move into a new business model. And essentially the premise of this business model was, you sign over your client base, based on, this is the client base that you've built no referrals were coming through the gym. They certainly weren't providing any work. You sign over your client base to the gym. If you ever want holiday or you ever missed a session, it'll be down to them to provide someone to fill in for you. And also, whereas you were in charge of taking, handling your own money, so to speak, and paying them a certain rent, is they now wanted to charge you to invoice the gym, your clients to pay the gym directly, and they wanted to pay you, which worked out the equivalent of less than a third of what you was charging. And it's our way or the highway. So that was another challenge. And this was people that I considered friends at the time. And my wedding was around the corner, which we paid for all ourselves. Obviously still bills and stuff to pay. And the challenge of finding a new place to work from, private facility, making sure it was in a close enough vicinity for all my current clients, making sure they were happy, and making sure I was happy with the new rent I was paying. As well as transitioning into married life and all the other added responsibilities. And I mean, we can go through various different challenges along the way. There's been many, but none of which, the short answer is, none of it's planned. I'm just winging it.
So that was that quite early on, like when you were like 20, so you said 22 when you bought the house, and then
so 22, yeah, we relocated back from Hertfordshire, which we were renting a flat up there. We both continued to work. I mentioned like my wife was getting a bit of anxiety at the time. She worked in Hammersmith, which was a lot of time on the tube, and she loved her job at the time, but she was getting panic attacks basically on the tube. That's not secret knowledge there, but we made the decision to be close to home. She decided to change her job, and I did as well. But then when we moved back to Essex, it was obviously being homed. My mum was very kind in putting us up for a couple of months. That was 2 months too long for me. I love my mum, but also I got used to my own space from like 18. Not that I intended on moving out of home at 18, but that's basically what happened. Is went to uni, relocated back to Essex, lived there for a couple of months, and we ended up buying our own house. And she's been stuck with me since.
That's nice. Yeah, and I'll say it's probably, I don't know where you are in Hertfordshire, but it's definitely nicer being near the seaside. You can just walk down to the beach.
Well, what far from you? I was Hatfield,
Oh, yeah.
and there's not a lot going on in Hatfield.
No, it's not.
You've
like
got the Galleria, Asda, and that's it, pretty much.
Galleria.
That was the only place that had stuff going on. Yeah, the Galleria. And I chose to go Hertfordshire because they just had this brand new de Havilland sports facility open up. All high tech, fully functioning gym. They had an S&C suite there. They had a partnership with a local college down the road. So when I was doing my S&C work, we had Arsenal ladies training out of there. We had Norwich City Football Club. We had England netball. We had the Mavericks that are based there. And we had the TAS, Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme, which is just like a government-funded thing for athletes in higher education that gives them access to strength and conditioning, physiotherapy, psychological support. And yeah, we had the contract with that as well. So it was like lots of exposure to lots of different things. So my earliest challenge, I guess, was possibly what I spoke to you to the point of before, was you're working with super compliant athletes that literally would do anything that is on their program just because that is their mindset, that is them, to working my PT hours more of an evening and overcoming the challenge of I've just been working with this super compliant, adherent person that doesn't question anything, to this person that's just struggling with a few workouts a week. What's that about? And obviously having to develop the skills necessary and the empathy. When I was being much younger, I guess at 19, I didn't really get my head around that as much as I would with more life experience now, and obviously those conversations that I had.
Yeah, I get that, but it's also probably shaped a lot of the experience and the understanding that you have now as well, which is a great thing, right? But I'm just interested in that because the reason I ask about that is I don't know what the stat is now, but when coaches come into the industry, there's a stat, isn't there, where they leave by like 6 months, 9 months, something like that. So what do you think are some of the common misconceptions about starting a career in the fitness space?
I think there's lots of glitz and glamour attached to it, that's for sure. I think lots of people have aspirations, rightly so sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. If it's of a personal interest to them that they can just drop the day job, go in and earn exactly what they were earning kind of in the corporate world, which is not necessarily a negative standpoint, but when I first got into the industry, it was never really about. It was career aspirations in terms of a level of person that I wanted to work with, which at that time was high performing athletes. There was never really a monetary drive to achieve a certain amount. That's very much changed to now. It's, on the understanding that you get into the industry, if you're a full-time S&C coach or if you're a full-time personal trainer, you can make like a decent income. Like it's just livable, no aspirations of maybe the 10 grand a month that there is now. But the glitz and glamour attached now, I do think, has that monetary value attached to it, in that, someone may know someone that is an online coach that attests to earning a certain amount of money. They seemingly live on a laptop on the beach. They don't do a lot. They play on Instagram all day, and there's not really much else that goes on. Or from a one-to-one in-person point of view, is a lot of people think, oh, well, I like being in the gym. I like training myself. I can train people all day long. It's just not an issue. But unaware of maybe the thought, the intention, the energy that goes into that. Because if you're talking to, I certainly, even towards the latter part of my in-person career, there's no way I could have done maybe the 10 hours of PT that I was doing in the early part of my career, because it's just so demanding, energy demanding, but from a planning standpoint as well. So for every 10 hours you were maybe doing in person, you've got your exercise planning. I wasn't even doing any nutritional programming at that time, but then when you add in nutritional programming, you add on other layers of accountability for your clients as well. You're essentially doubling up your hours. So I think a lot of people maybe are unaware of how much time goes into that. Also, there is a totally non-linear relationship between your level of income, I guess, and length of service. So if I was to liken it to something like what one of my friends might do, is work in insurance. So one of my friends may have gone from college into insurance. They enter at a certain level. They get their qualifications paid for them. They get a promotion, which is a certain amount. And then let's hypothetically say it, at 45, they might have a certain amount of income they can rashly base their sights on. It's not the same for fitness. It's just not. Your income is directly reflected in where you sit in terms of value, what the market's doing, the ever-changing algorithm, which no one ever understands, marketing. These days, how good a videographer you are, your marketing, your business acumen, which, again, when I first got into kind of fitness, it was just, this is how you do exercise. We didn't do anything to do with business. Nothing was on a business level. So when I say to people now, it's all said and done, that's bad about the industry, is, again, from a business standpoint, there was no guidance for business at that time. Again, it was very much just finding your own way. Even when I was working for my uni gym, and my take home after tax was basically £12.50 an hour for PT sessions. So I think when people now come into the industry and they think, oh, I can make this certain amount of money by doing these certain amount of hours, it's that whole, we stand on the shoulders of giants, in that we're now in this position where people can do those sort of things because of the less glitz and glamour things that perhaps was in the past when I first got into it.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question now? I said lots of words.
No, you did that, because I think it in a nutshell, I'd say people can come in and they can. I always see it happen mainly with people who have already got these skills that are sometimes transferable over, in terms of they either understand how to work with people really well, and they can really their emotional intelligence and that way of understanding is there from whatever they're doing in the past, or maybe they're like that, and then they can almost transfer that into the aspects of coaching in whatever format it is that works for their audience. And it's very few and far between. It's not like everyone can do that, and I think that's what gets jumped on, and is this misconception that you can just join the fitness industry and within a month you could be, like you say, earning this amount of money on a beach somewhere. But I feel like that's been kind of abused a little bit by people in the space to make it seem.
It's almost so from like an athlete standpoint now, I think. It's like, you see athletes that move over into coaching, and just because they're a great athlete doesn't mean they're a great coach. So I think some people go in with the attitude is like, I can maybe achieve this physically myself, therefore I must be able to teach others to do this. And again, it's all those other skills that you mentioned.
Yeah, Yeah, so it does make sense, and but I also see it as a huge positive because I think there should be the ability for people to do things like that if their skills are there and they can suit and it's done in the right way. So that I think is a massive positive. Is there anything? Because you mentioned there about like when you started off, there was no, it was just we did our stuff that we needed to do, and there was no like business, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And then now where you're at, do you have like an approach, or how do you approach stuff like that? How do you approach like marketing in general?
I think again, it's like a challenge that baptism the hard way almost, because predominantly most of my career has been in person. So essentially, your marketing was your marketing without it intentionally being marketing, because you're just in and around the gym, you're being helpful, you're being approachable. People get a gauge of who you are as a person as well.
Yeah,
Whereas in the online space, it's so vast, that's a little bit more challenging to communicate. But I think, at least from, I can only attest to myself, but from my marketing standpoint, having done so much in person, is that I only can be myself. So as a transferable thing, that does come over into my social media marketing, which I think maybe people have a little bit of a lack of courage for these days, is that they, because they are subjected to so much more of what everyone else is doing and thinking they need to emulate that, is they don't necessarily have the confidence to, this is me, I'm going to appeal to these people, I know how to communicate with these people based on having worked with them in person. Because that's the other side of things, without going on too much of a tangent. It's not necessarily say that people can't directly go online, but I do think you do need a level of in-person, interpersonal skills, even if they're not distinctly fitness-based. But even if it's, I'm talking about from a corporate office world, is just a general gist and understanding for meeting people, talking to them on their level, getting them to understand, how to attentively listen, how to relay that back to people. You do need some of those skills, which I think is difficult for, and this isn't an ageist thing, and it's not to kind of dissuade anyone, but if you're new to the industry, you've had no real experience in any kind of job, and you want to go straight into online coaching, I think that's a little bit of an uphill struggle. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's difficult if you've had no working environment to kind of develop those skills and communicate that. So I guess with my marketing now, it's more giving people a little bit. When I say it's intentional marketing, Dan, come on, it's me. You know who you're talking to here. It's never too much intentional, but my only intention is that, is it of value? Is it of useful to the people that I'm speaking to? And does it give them insight into the sort of person that I am? Because I think with the level of coach out there now, is the difference in knowledge base isn't too dissimilar, but the most distinct thing might be that person and how they resonate with someone. So their experience, how they communicate with people, what they value. People are more likely to align with those things rather than what people know. I mean, I've got a nutrition qualification, I've got a sports qualification, I've done my PT qualification, I've got an SSE qualification. Most people have qualifications of sorts, but it doesn't mean they're going to be the same level of coach as someone else. So I think what sets people apart is who you are as a person, how you communicate with them, and how you show a level of compassion and empathy to actually meet them with the challenges they're experiencing.
yeah, and that's going to tie into my next question around. I don't know if you see this or if you do this. I mean, I kind of get that you might do this on purpose a little bit, maybe not. Maybe it's just the thing, because in this space, I mean, you touched on it a minute ago where you were saying about like we've got to be aware of all these things like the algorithm, the trends, and all that stuff, right? But you very much go, do you know what? No, I'm going to do this because this is my way of doing it. I will write the long captions. I will do the post the way I want to do them.
Please don't go and highlight all the things that I do badly now.
No,
Please.
but it's almost like because everyone does that, when people talk about like, oh, when you see people, what's the fucking the phrase that people talk about, like zigging and zagging, like when you zig, like go the other way and do this stuff. It's almost like you're doing that because this is you anyway. So and you're not going to then go,
Erratic.
I'm going to kind of bend that to suit what people are doing here. It's like, no. I think that, I don't know whether is that something you do, or you're aware of what you're doing, or how do you think about that?
It's not that intentional. I appreciate the credit you're trying to give me there. It's not that intentional. It's just me, and that's all I can be. So when I think of social media, is essentially it's a game on some level, right? Like whether people are what's called social climbing, whether they want to align with certain people so they share their stories so they can accumulate some of their followers, or whether they're using trending audio, or they're doing the latest videography caption, or they've hired a separate videographer. I think there's a certain level of that which you're playing to a structure that appeases a certain group of people for a distinct reason, which makes it inauthentic in of itself. So in an effort to be authentic, people are almost inauthentically representing themselves by changing the way they are to appease to people, right? And I think that can work on a positive and negative. So when you're getting really good engagement and things like that, is I think people double down. I think, oh, this is really appealing to certain people, even if it might not feel quite aligned with them. At the same time, if them zagging after that is because they've had something negative, again, you're inauthentically representing yourself. So I'm nothing if not consistent. I'm consistent with how I do things, which isn't necessarily always helpful from a business sense. Being like perfectly frank about that, because I will play the game, but only on my own terms.
Yeah.
Because that is the only way I can do it. Because if I feel the push or the urge to do it in a way that doesn't feel authentic to me, it leaves me feeling a bit miserable and performative, and I don't want to do it. And unfortunately, I'm so stubborn. I often will do that to the detriment of my own business sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I obviously, I've known you for so long now, but I see we've had chats about this before about that approach, and it is being true to you and your values and who you are, and like staying strong with it, and not, and you're I like the way you put that around. As soon as you start to shift and bend a little bit towards that, then you're not going to stand out anyway, because it's taken away from what you truly are anyway, and that's Instagram in a nutshell, isn't it? I think, but
I think it's because it's cultivating a way that I prefer to work with people as well, because it is on a deeper level. You know, I consider coaching a collaborative exchange, and we can perhaps get onto coaching on. I think it's become this term that's used interchangeably, essentially for a product that's been delivered. When that's more that is typical PT, I would guess. And there's not to say there's anything wrong with that. It's just not coaching, you know. So when you're in a gym, and you know it's coaching a different way, and it's just exercise prescription, is very different to, you know, speaking to someone about the challenges that they're experiencing, speaking about habit formation, speaking to them about behaviour change longer term. It's not just here's your plan, here's your macros, which is, you know, again, it's not to say that's a negative. People are on different stages in their journeys, but if someone comes to me with coaching, this is a collaborative thing. I want to get to know that person. I want to know the challenges they're experiencing. I want to know what they value in life. I want to know how we can navigate things together. I don't want to flip the whole world upside down, because any longer term behaviour change is going to be on the basis that it adds to their life, not removes from it. So, you know, if you're telling someone that who really values time with the family that they're going to need to live out of a tub, I'm using an extreme example here, but they're going to have to prepare weigh every morsel of food that enters their mouth, is sure you'll get an adherence period, but at some point that's going to drop off. That's not behaviour change, and you know that's not who I work with, and that's fine. There are plenty of people that will work with that sort of person. There's no judgment on anyone either side, but it's when people deliver a product and they call it coaching, I'm not on board with that. I'm sorry, I'm just not.
No, that's good, man. Yeah, I knew we'd like segue into coaching at some point. I was trying my hardest to like skip around it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did I deviate too much?
No, it's fine. It's good to get onto that. I am conscious. I wanted to ask one thing that's maybe slightly tied into this as well, because it's still linked to what I was talking about before. But I'm curious about this as well. It's like, because I know you write a lot, and your emails as well and things like that. Is there a certain approach you take to writing?
I have to feel quite strongly about it. Is my approach is that my phone is just full of notes, and things will pop into my head, or I'll read something and I go, I just want to explore a little bit more on that. I don't really have a process per se in that this is what I decide on a subject based on something I've seen and think I'm going to write about that. it would have been something that's crossed my mind through something I've read or something that I've had a conversation with that I feel is quite important and of value to someone. And then I'll just expand on it in bits and pieces until I can form it into something. I always describe reading is great for me in terms of forming my own opinion, my own informed opinion on things. So I take bits and pieces from different things that I've read, and then when I write them down in my own words, that's me articulating those things out loud to make them make sense for me. And then what I'll do from there is redefine that, refine it a little bit more to make sense to other people as well. So along with learning this new knowledge and forming my own opinions, I'm then trying to translate it for myself, but also to translate it for other people in a way that I think is helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not really like
Not a structured
structure as
process.
such, but gathering the information on stuff that you feel strongly about, but then formulating that into something that could be put into a way that you can
Yeah,
explain it to.
strongly and important because it's I think we're both kind of attest to it. It's like you can't always write on stuff that you feel strongly about, but it'll be stuff that I think is like valuable and important on a deeper level with people. And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm on the understanding that my content isn't palatable for everyone, but I'm also at ease with that, being that I'm sure when I do work with the people that stuff is meaningful for, is they will value that stuff, and I know they will get a whole lot of me in that process.
Yeah, but that's what it should be, right? And it's that pressure to conform to the trends and the things that are happening, being able to resist that because you're staying true to no, this is who I am. These are the things that I find. This is the way I want to put stuff across, and that will resonate with those people. And I think if you start to then shift that down, it erodes like who you are as a person. So yeah, even that
Yeah,
can be quite hard to do at times because you're like, well, and you say at the detriment to like, actually, could this be like negative towards the business? And you think, such a hard,
I had this chat with Ella, and we defined it as the cost of congruence sometimes, because it's almost incongruent to delve into this world of doing things that don't quite align with you. So the cost of congruence sometimes is that there is no guarantee of an outcome per se, but you doing that thing is intentional and it's meaningful to you.
yeah,
And that's the cost of congruence, is that there's no guarantee on a reward on that. There's like the hope for it, if you like. But I think I've got a good enough understanding. Is I know what I could do, but whether I should is the question I always ask myself. I know what things I could post on social media to build a social media following. And I don't mean this in the terms of arrogance, by the way, but whether that's aligned with me and I feel I should, I know kind of if I was to put together a rapid fat loss program, I could. It would feel weird to people who probably follow me because they know that's not me, but I know I could sell that, and I know in the past, and we've had conversations about it, is largely our industry is formed off diet culture, if you like, and capitalism. So I know from time gone past that when I worked with physique athletes and I focused on my own physique and I did photo shoots, when I did photo shoot challenges, they would just sell easy. And from a monetary standpoint, yeah, that's great. But I also know that when you're taking someone through a physique competition prep and you hold health as a higher personal value and you see them becoming unhealthy and you see it negatively affecting their life, that does affect how I feel about myself as a person, as a coach, and affect my sleep and everything like that. So again, it's the cost of congruence. I could sell photo shoot packages and they were doing pretty well when I was still doing those, and I could use before and after pictures. And the cost of congruence is it may have a negative impact on business sometimes. I might not make as much money, but am I always at ease with that? It's just a challenge. I'm always torn between what I could do and what I should do and what's right longer term and what's just me being stubborn. But it's just a weight of responsibility I feel as a fitness and health professional. Is there's this weight of responsibility that if people do look to you for your thoughts and feelings on things, I'm all for informed choice, but that has to be the most honest account of that. So that's the positives and the negatives. and that has to be aligned with how I want to work with people and the service that I think they deserve as well. So if that is putting some people off, so be it.
Yeah. And then do you not think it's, if you say, hypothetically, like you, all of a sudden Dan just went, right, I'm going to do 6 week shreds, that's where I'm going down. What we're doing then is we're also, because it's harder to have that, like the messaging and the stuff that you're talking about in the space is really important. So it's that kind of needs to be addressed and it needs to be acknowledged by people. And if in order for change to happen, so if all of a sudden you decide, you know what, I'm just going to go down this route, and then what we're doing, we're not doing that, we're not having that impact that we're slowly chipping away at. Because I feel like that's the stuff that coaches weigh up every now and then. Like, do I post the transformation pictures or do I just stay strong here? And it's such a like that tightrope that they're walking on. And I feel like every time you kind of chip into that, I'm not saying people who use transformation pictures, brilliant, like fine, as long as you're happy with it, cool. But when you start looking at how things unfold in the industry, and like you mentioned before, what it's being built on, if there aren't people like yourself, like stepping in and doing these things and making a stand and making this message strong in there, like, then I don't know where I sit on that. It's like really such a weird place to be.
It's such a personal one, and that's why I think it's distinctly individual. I don't think there is a correct way or a wrong way per se. It's just what feels right and aligned with you as a coach. Same as I don't draw any judgment on anyone that uses transformation pictures. Like, people do as they please. I just know what I feel strongly about, and also I feel quite strongly about people putting their whole identity in just their appearance, and it being a facet of what we are. But I also take it with a pinch of salt, in that, again, something we kind of addressed before we started recording is people don't think and care too deeply about all the things that I do, and that's just one of those things. There are many important causes on the planet that people are hugely invested in that others just couldn't care less about. So I can't go on the assumption that everyone cares about people's body image, everyone cares about people's mental health. Truth of it is, frankly, some people are in this industry just to make a quick buck because they know what they can sell. When someone comes out of Love Island with 1 million followers and decides to launch a fitness product or sell a certain supplement, then they're not thinking about the longer term effects of this. They're thinking about, this is a paycheck, and I just accept that. That's fine. I don't have to be okay with it. I can accept it and be acceptance with my own approach with things, and that's ultimately what I have to be about for my own sanity. I think from a point of self-preservation, I've spent a lot of time and wasted energy worried and frustrated with other people's messages, which I still do get frustrated with, I have to admit, but I'm not going to waste a ton of energy worrying about what they're doing instead of worrying about what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's right. That's the hard thing sometimes, I think, for people, because you, like you say, you would just end up wasting energy, time, where you could be doing much more with that for the people who do get what you are on about, and the people you do support anyway. So I want to kind of flip this a little bit and ask, is there, over your time doing this, is there a particularly like memorable moment that you can think of across like the last 18 years in your experience?
What, related to anything?
Related to you in the industry, in this space, or just related to it in some way, like to do with the things you've done, because I know you've done quite a few things across the years, and I don't know, maybe it was your Miami Pro debut or whatever, I don't know, but
to become a Miami Pro. I've got quite a few reflections based on the physique side of things, I think, which is why I feel so passionately and strongly about the mental health and the body image and people's thoughts and perceptions of themselves as well. What I've seen over the years and experienced in myself is that a lot of people go to these great lengths to change their appearance under the assumption that their thoughts and feelings about themselves are going to change with that, only to find a lot of those things worsen. So physique competition for me was predominantly one of those, in that I wasn't engaged in any kind of health-seeking behaviours growing up. I just wasn't sporty. I was more of a spectator than anything. I grew up in a Mediterranean family. It wasn't necessarily that it was full of highly processed food. It's just we ate all the time, and that's what we did really well. So being ridiculed and stuff growing up, is I entered the space predominantly focused on performance to wanting to change aesthetically, hoping for more acceptance,
Oh, okay.
hoping to get some validation from that point, which is why my interest in physique sport came up, really, because it was at that time a little bit of monkey see, monkey do. Anyone that was respected and positioned as an authority in the industry looked a certain way. So I thought this is the natural route for most people to go, only to find subjecting myself to the judgment of strangers on a stage, which I hated because I hate being the centre of attention and posing anyway, actually made me feel a little bit more insecure about my body, to plenty of opportunities coming out of that. So I became I'm doing air quotations now to someone that's listening, is that becoming a sponsored athlete with PhD
Discount codes.
nutrition.
I think I used your discount codes a few times actually.
Well, back then, yeah, which is why, often when I challenge stuff now, it's not on the premise that it's out of jealousy or, I think we've got this narrative around anyone that is not solely about fat loss and people dieting and having physique aspirations is because they've never achieved anything themselves. It's like, I like to think I've done those things, which is why I can have a more considered and informed experience to most people now, and I can share that with people. But yeah, doing that, and I think there was my first, like most people, I think I got a magazine feature. I got invited along to a men's health audition, and every time kind of solidified, no matter kind of how I looked, is being subjected to the judgment of others and not really changing your thoughts and feelings about yourself is the big roadblock there. And lots of people that I work with have experienced exactly the same thing. And going along to Body Power and having one of the marketing team at the time offering for people to have their picture taken with me, but then asking whether they want my shirt on or off, that feeling a bit gross, to being asked to write for Muscle and Fitness and thinking, okay, great, people are interested in my words, for them asking for basically a picture of my kit off. Anyone that congratulated me after that was based on my picture in the magazine, not actually what I'd written, that being a bit deflating. And lots of opportunities like that were based on how I looked. My first speaking opportunities were in skin tight PhD clothing rather than actually what I had to offer professionally. And I thought the two were aligned. I thought, you did your stripes, you did your time, you did the physique stuff, but also then people became interested in what you had to say. And the biggest reflection is that hasn't changed a great deal over that length of time.
Yeah, it's quite scary when you think about it like that.
Yeah, because even now, I guess people, if I do share the odd thing based from that time in my life or whatever, it'll be based on appearance, not actually what I've said in the caption or the message to come out of it. So I'm trying to change that in my own way, but the problem I guess we have in the industry is that we're all enablers to a certain degree, is that we still celebrate that stuff. There comes a certain amount of social reinforcement. It's still the people that are positioned as authorities. A lot of the mentors look a certain way. A lot of the people that apparently we would say results and using before and after pictures, it's because of appearance ideals. It's that is still glorified as the epitome of health and fitness, even though people have gone to less healthy lengths to get there. So I'd like to make the assumption that things are changing, but I think that's largely my echo chamber. I like to do my bit, but we need to see bigger voices, more influential people, because with influence comes power. And the problem is, visibility-wise, is what is still hugely visible is a certain look, and that is aligned with a certain level of authority, knowledge base, and what people aspire to look up to and emulate to a certain degree. So, unless those voices that are up there start talking about these things, I can't really see a shift, no matter how much I try and bang the drum.
No, yeah, I agree as well. And like you touched on a moment ago, like around Love Island's like back on, isn't it? So like that's and I might have caught like one or two mainly because Ashley watches it back. I'm like, it's that just reinforces a little bit of it, doesn't it? As well, that kind of really that attractiveness and things. Although they've got Ashley was like, oh, that's their diversity quota or something, because one guy's got like a slightly deaf ear, so they were like that ticked the box. Like,
I bet he's still a handsome chap though.
yeah, really good looking. So anyway, what are your in terms of then like future goals and aspirations, where do you see those?
I don't have like a 5-10 year plan. Is that with my messaging is just getting it out to as many people as possible. You know, I love coaching. I will always continue to love coaching, but I'm not sure it offers, because I only work with people one to one. I say only. That's how I prefer to work with people. I shouldn't say only. I'm not sure that gives me the capacity to have kind of the impact to access more people to talk about these things. Maybe my bias, and it fits your narrative and all that, but I do think these are important things, and I've grown a little bit tone deaf, or sorry, I should say I find it quite tone deaf, just everything being reduced to just fat loss at the moment. So I'm trying to do more longer form content. I know that's a counter to the narrative at the moment. More podcasts, more stuff like this, more YouTube content. I want to do more talks where possible. You know, I love doing in-person events. I love getting in front of people and having these conversations, not to talk at people, but to engage them in the conversation, to hear about their experience as well. That's so important. I think in those big dynamics and the way they work as well, it gives people the courage to actually engage in the conversation. So I know specifically the last few body image talks that I've done is, you know, people have found the courage to actually share their experiences of it and question a few things that they've been exposed. And that's men and women. It's, you know, typically thought of as just a female issue, but it's men and women that are actively involved in these. And I just want to get out there more. I want to get into more businesses and talk about these things. I want to talk about the complex interrelationship between our mental and physical health, which I think they're still addressed almost as a separate entity. And on a personal note, like mental illness as well, and increasing awareness and the discussion around that is something I'm a little bit more passionate about, because I think we're always interested in what can we capitalise, where's the happy, clappy, positive side of things. Let's talk about mental health. Go out for a walk. Let's do a cold dip, plunge dip, or whatever that is. But the uncomfortable conversation people still aren't happy with is the one around mental illness, because it is bloody uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Episodes of psychosis, talking about people that can't leave the house, you know, people that have their lives, their relationships impacted, their income impacted, their housing impacted from what they're going through. That's still the conversation people feel uncomfortable with.
Yeah, and those harder conversations are the things that, because they are that difficult to talk about, isn't it? But that's why, yeah, we need the people like yourself to be able to still have those conversations and highlight these things. Because like you say, it's easy for people to just say, you know, just be a bit more positive and smile more.
Yeah.
So,
Or my inbox is always open, and you know, I will bang this drum until the wheels fall off. But we talk about the strength in speaking narrative, but I think it's more an issue of who has the listening skills, who is positioned to actually deal with people at their most vulnerable now. Because it's quite we need a level of vulnerability reflected back at us to be vulnerable with someone. And when people are putting on this performative front on social media and things like that, it just feels really disingenuous for people to say, oh, my inbox is always open, because especially when they're putting on a front and maybe reading stoic quotes, or, you know, giving less of themselves honestly. And I think that the danger is that everything becomes a soundbite, and it diminishes it to the point that the people that are experiencing real hardship just don't feel safe or comfortable going to people for help, because it becomes like a parody. Everyone becomes a caricature of themselves.
yeah, the soundbite thing I see a lot. It's just that's what Instagram is now. It's sound bites, and then like you say, message me. My inbox is always open. My VA will pick it up. Don't worry. So,
Yeah, like the premise of coaching is personable. That means engaging conversation yourself. It's so bizarre that people call what they do in coaching when they don't even know someone's surname, or, you know, they can't put a name to a face. And it's just different. It's not necessarily negative or positive. That's not what it's about. I feel quite strongly about what coaching is, and in my opinion, I think where the terms used so interchangeably is what's coaching and what's a delivered product are two different things at the moment.
yeah, man.
To the point it's confusing for the consumer as much as it is the people actually picking up coaching, because they're calling what they do coaching, but they don't necessarily know what's involved.
Yeah, definitely see that. So it's confusing all around, isn't it, for people who do you trust in that space?
It's so hard, because if you look to people as authorities, the ones that seemingly should be trusted are the ones that are followed by, if you look in the traditional sense, is you'd have like a chief and a tribe, or you'd have like a head figure in charge, or a head of influence in a group of people. So on a basic primitive level, when you look at someone that has lots of people that consider them hugely influential and the point of authority, it makes sense that that person should be. But we know the nature of social media and how it sets people up for deception is that's not always the case.
It's nuts. The highlights, isn't it? Highlight reel. I I'm conscious like it's like 50. I always got time in there. 50 minutes, man. I've got one thing that I want to end this with at the end. It's like 10.
I've got one question for you.
Okay, cool. Do you want to do that first?
Before that, yeah. The question for you is, why did you make me fill out a questionnaire for this bloody podcast, man?
I forgot I'd done that.
Have you read the answers on it?
I forgot. I was so organised that I'd set up a questionnaire that I forgot I'd done it. Oh my god, no.
Because I booked in a time for this, and then you sent me the link to fill in a thing.
How it should have worked is when you book it in, the link should have been there. So that's why I sent it to you manually, and then I've just obviously forgotten.
No, you sent me a link to your questionnaire. You was like, yeah, but you haven't filled in this questionnaire. I was like, okay, I'll fill in your questionnaire.
Yeah, sorry, man. It's supposed to be a part of that process, but obviously it gets missed because it's not very obvious, I don't think, when you book the call. It's supposed to be the links there.
Right.
But yeah, no, mate, I've genuinely forgot that I sent that out.
Read it after.
I'll read it. Oh man, we're gonna have to do another podcast now, so it's fine. We'll do another one. Yeah, I had these questions. They're one-word answers, right? There's 10 of them, so we do them,
okay.
And they're like quick fire. So, are you ready?
Go.
Favorite book?
No Bad Parts.
Ooh, dream destination?
Australia.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Introvert or extrovert?
Ambivert.
Ooh, sweet or savoury?
Sweet.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
And early bird, night owl?
Early bird.
And this one, Netflix or cinema?
Netflix.
Nice. There.
Sorry, I say that ambivert thing because, I think everyone likes to live in boxes, right? They like to label themselves and live in boxes. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I like to challenge the narrative on these things. So I am typically what would be classed as an introvert. I need time out to charge up. I find those things quite overwhelming by nature, which is hence why I'd rather sit in and watch Netflix than go to the cinema. or at the latest Fit Expo. They're quite full on, those things. And there was a minibus that got us to and from the event. And on the way back, I just stuck my noise cancelling headphones in, cranked it up, stuck my sunglasses on. And I said to everyone in the minibus, I love you all, but please don't talk to me. And the year before, I locked myself in the toilet for 10 minutes to recharge. Because I think what it's more a case of, getting to the actual point, is that we change based on the circumstances and the environment. I'm an introvert by nature, I think, but if you put me with a group of people I feel at ease with, I probably am a little bit more extroverted, or I'm talking about something I'm passionate about, I'm probably a little bit more extroverted. Whereas if I thought for years, in my mid-20s probably, that I just hated being around people. And then you come to realise you're probably just surrounded with the wrong kind of people. Because the right kind of people, they leave you feeling energised. And yeah, you probably still do need time to chill out and charge. But I think we're adaptive. I don't like living in boxes.
Yeah, I know. But because I know you anyway, I can see why that's the thing. And I kind of get it as well, like that when you get it's overstimulus, isn't it? Like, fuck's sake, I just need to be here for a bit.
Sensory overwhelm.
No, mate, that's cool. Thank you, Anne. If people want to find out where you are, where's best?
The gram or LinkedIn. I spend a little bit more time on LinkedIn these days. I say that Instagram the.dan.osman, I've also got a YouTube channel, and I have my own podcast now as well. Dan Osman's Ramblings of a Madman does exactly what it says on the tin.
Yes, go and listen to it. Good.
Thank you, mate.
No,
I appreciate
brilliant,
the
man.
invite.